Here.
Council President Hu.
Here.
Thank you. If everyone will stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. If you're tuning in tonight and you haven't turned in your ballot, happy Election Day. You now have an hour and 25 minutes, 8 o'clock, to come by Tigard City Hall and drop off your ballot. Please do so. Local elections matter, and we have some important stuff. A couple of school board races. I believe there's a TVF&R board seat open. Two. And the water district. So lots of important things happening. Local government reaches you the closest and it impacts your daily lives. So please vote. Are there any non-agenda items this evening?
Nothing from us, Mayor.
Okay. Seeing none. For public comment tonight, if you'd like to call in, please do so to get in the queue. The phone number is 503-966-4101. And we will call on you shortly. Assistant City Manager Nyland, please report to us on previous public comment.
Good evening, Mayor Lube. At last week's council meeting, we did receive 2 public comments. Both were made in person. Both were about time, place, and manner, and both community meetings members received a follow-up response. The first comment made was an ask to add a few more specific streets to the ordinance that would prohibit camping. Our team reached out to that individual and changes were made to the proposed ordinance you will be considering next week. The second comment was about time. The ask was for more flexibility around seasons. After much discussion, including conversations with our chart members, we felt that it would create less confusion to stick with a universal time. Lastly, we are already working on the outreach and awareness pieces once time, place, manner is adopted, including producing that pamphlet, updating our GIS maps, developing fact sheets, and talking points. That is my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We did receive one comment for written public comment today that was due Monday by noon. It was from Kevin Bates, and it was in regards to time, place, and manner, and it was a request to include specific streets, which are Tigard Street to Grant, Burnham Street, Commercial Street, and Scoffin Street, Ash Avenue, both sides. So those were received for public comment. Is there anyone signed up to speak to us in person today?
No, none.
Okay. Senior Network Administrator Cleary, are there any phone callers in the queue?
We have no phone callers nor video testimony today.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to our next agenda item, we have a community organization update, and then we have Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue State of the District report here. Chief Weiss, please come on up. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here in person.
It is my pleasure. I want to sit on
Perfect.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Councilors. Thank you for having me here. I know that you guys are really busy with city business, but it's nice to be able to get in front of you and talk about what the fire district's been doing for the last year. We rotate, so sometimes I get to come to Tigard and sometimes I don't. I'm glad I got it this time around, but I brought friends and I want to introduce friends. A lot of times law enforcement partners get to see the firefighters that are at the fire stations in our cities. Sometimes you don't, so we brought a crew by this evening. So Lieutenant Schuster, would you be so kind as to introduce your crew?
This is firefighter Derek Potter, firefighter John Dell, and engineer Tim Hayes. We're one of the crews at your fire station, one of your Tigard fire stations down here. We rotate 24-hour shifts. Today's C shift, so we're happy to be here.
And the fun fact for tonight is they are on truck 51. Trucks don't have water, engines do. And it's one of those questions we get all the time. What's the difference between an engine and a truck, right? So we're gonna go through the state of the district, and in the interest of time, I'll try and be brief. But this is what's happened so far in 2022, and we can change the slide. Perfect. So much like businesses and cities, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue also has a mission statement. We have a strategic plan. Our mission statement is actually all of these words put together in a pretty sentence, and it's that we create safer communities through prevention, preparedness, and effective emergency response. We also have a 5-year strategic plan. We keep it simple. It's HOP, health, opportunity, and performance. That's what we live by, and that's what our goals and strategies are devised by. So we used to have a 2-year plan. Now we had a 1-year plan just to gap us into the 5-year. But what we found was we couldn't get everything done and make headway on our strategic plan in 2 years. So we've changed it to 5 years. That rolls out July 1 of this year, and so we'll start moving forward. Everything we do and everything we ask of our employees is based on our strategic plan. So we follow that very closely. Next slide, please. In terms of health and performance, staffing is certainly part of our future. Right now, we are going through massive amounts of succession. The cycle kind of works in the fire service. You get hired. In my case, you get hired 29 years ago, and everybody's going out the door. Then it's kind of stagnant for a while, and then the cycle begins again. We are in that cycle. We had 55 promotions, people promoting from firefighter or a different rank to another rank in the organization in just that year alone. 63% of our upper management will be eligible to retire or be on a work back in the next 5 years. That is massive. Myself and command staff, most of us will be gone in the next 3 to 5 years as well. So it's just that constant change. What do we have with that? Well, we have hiccups. We have bumps in the road. We have challenges like most organizations do, but we always find a way to get through them, and we will continue to do so. One thing of note is that social media has been something that we really pushed for this year. We have 2 academies per year to make up for what we lost during the pandemic. So an academy gets out June 1 of this year. Another one starts in August of this year. And then we're going to repeat the process in February of 24. So we're going to be right back in that cycle to try and make up for where we lost. But what I challenge staff to do, and ironically I have no social media, but I said we can do more. We should do more social media. And they've actually answered the call through Instagram and TikTok. If you go to the next slide, I don't know if the video is going to work.
Oh, hey, you're already here. We don't have a lot of time. We've got to fire a district, so come with me. Here's what you need to know. Starting December 2nd, Tualatin Valley is hiring firefighter EMTs and firefighter paramedics. We're a big district, so there's a lot of opportunities. We're looking for compassionate and driven individuals to better serve our communities. If that's you, start getting your paperwork together. That includes your fire team scores, CPAT, and any licenses. For more information, check out our website, and we're putting on new videos, but right now I gotta go.
And there were tons of hits on social media, including Instagram and TikTok and others, and I'm super proud. We're trying to look into Be Real. I don't know if you've heard of Be Real, but we've heard of it from my college daughters, and so they're looking into it to see if that's something we can use too. But that's how you get to people. That's how you reach out to people, and so we're trying to find those creative ways. As you mentioned earlier, we do have 2 board members that are up for election this evening. We also were lucky enough in 2021 November to pass a bond, $122 million bond. This is some of the things that we intend to do over the next several years as part of that bond. A lot of it has to do with station upgrades and station remodels. There are some station replacements, and then we're going to really get after the training center. If anybody's been down to our training center in Sherwood, it is the same training center I started on 30 years ago. Not a lot has changed in 30 years, and so money goes fast, as we know, in construction these days, so $122 million will go fast, but a lot of it will go towards the training center down there in Sherwood, Tualatin area. And then replacement of vehicles, and then land, like we've done in the past, land for future fire stations. We actually do have some properties out there right now that we purchased when things were a little bit less expensive, and we still have them, and hopefully as we expand, we'll be able to do that. Next slide, please. This is my fun slide. I love showing this one. The folks behind me that work at Station 51 can tell you every hot spot on that map. They can look at that where it's kind of that yellowish orange, and I guarantee there's a name associated with that location. It's some sort of a business or care or hospice or hospital or individual even. What you'll notice on this is your counts for Tigard. This is the city of Tigard, so not the surrounding areas, the actual city of. And you'll see it's a lot like all the other stations. 83% of the calls are EMS. The other portion are fire or fire-related calls. You'll notice that the call volume went down in 2020, and that's the same as everywhere. There was that little dip because of the pandemic, and then it came back like gangbusters to where it is this year, or last year rather, at 7,200 calls for that year. Typically, for a fire station, the calls nowadays are every day of the week are about the same percentage. We used to be able to tell you when a call would happen and what day of the week and what time. It's a little more difficult to do as the call volume increases. They all kind of spread out across that day and across the days of the week. One interesting thing for this particular fire station is on the right-hand side, you'll see top station responses. It says Station 51, your Tigard fire station, or I should say one of your Tigard fire stations, has 51% of the calls. Any other station, if it's the only station in that jurisdiction and it's 51% of the calls that they respond to, I would sound an alarm and we would add apparatus. That is far below the standard for the areas that we serve. We want it up around the 80 to 95% reliability rating. But in this particular case, the reason I point it out is you're much like a Beaverton. There's more call volume and I can't put all the apparatus in one station. I've got to nibble around the edges. So you get King City, you get Walnut Station, you get my old home Progress Station. They all contribute to what you see there for call data. You get multiple engines and trucks and apparatus that respond to your calls. So that is the incident data slide. I'll move on to the next one. And TVFR, as usual, is not afraid of technology and innovation. On your left-hand side, and this was after years of trials and errors, we were able to set up a BC simulation where they could actually sit in their command vehicle. They'd have a screen in front of them with an incident. There would be simulated voice and audio, and they could communicate back and forth and learn tricks of the trade and just be better craftsmen of what they do. We've been trying to do that for a number of years, and that finally kicked off in the last year. The upper right is the Lucas device. A Lucas device is an automatic CPR device. You place it on the patient, and it automatically does the CPR, which frees the hands of the first responders and paramedics to do other things while the machine is giving CPR. We started with our more outlying areas with the Lucas device. They're not cheap, so we decided to go outside, and then our medics and rescues that transport people. And now I think most vehicles have them. Do you guys have them on the engine or the rescue or truck? No, core unit. So what it's really handy for is if you're out somewhere and there's a long distance to the hospital, having that do chest compressions for you is something pretty amazing. So we'll continue to purchase those. And then in the lower right-hand corner is a version of our new cardiac monitors. It's technology that talks to the EMTs and paramedics. It can talk to the hospitals. It can collect data and hold data for us, and then we can learn from it to be better off. Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue has a 43% survival rate for cardiac arrest if it's witnessed. That is massively high. You don't see that hardly anywhere in the country. So 43% when it's witnessed, that's when we have success rates. So we do have technology like that. The other one that's kind of fun that we started recently is a project with Apple. I was at a meeting about firefighter safety and health and wellness, and there's a thing called Apple Project Shield, and they utilize your Apple Watches. And I said, well, I have an Apple Watch. Can we be a part of that? And so we're actually one of the only fire departments in the country that's piloting these Apple Watches to tell you about your health, your wellness, your sleep, your stress, your heart rate, and I'm sure it's going to do a whole lot more in the years to come. So we're proud to be on the front line of that as well. Next slide, please. So we talked about the call volume, and we talked about 83% of the calls are medical, so the other part are fire and fire related. But if you'll see here, 101,000 hours plus of non-EMS. Why do we do training like that? Because this is high risk and low frequency. So we do a lot of fire training. You could make the case that because we run so many EMS calls, we get more hands-on, we get more experience in training. Obviously, we do a lot of hours in EMS training, but we need to have that fire because that's critical. That's where life safety it's at its risk, and so we do more of that kind of training. Moving on. Next slide, please. That's a medic, Medic 35. That's one of the calls, or one of the vehicles taking calls from your city. It's one of our transport vehicles. After 12 years of working in Washington County on the EMS Council and the EMS Alliance, we were able to finally change the EMS system in Washington County. It has been the same system in Washington County for 25 years, nearly unimpeded by any change. It's been the same since I've been here. And so the last 12 years, we have really, truly concentrated on how can we make the system better. and it's finally coming to fruition. The county went out for an RFP change, and that should affect a change July 1. I think it's been delayed to August 1. But beyond the change in provider, it's the change in the system that makes the system adaptable, makes it so that we can do improvements along the way, more accountability, more transparency, and WACA gets to dispatch all the units in the system, which is amazing that we've never had. So we're looking forward to that change. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. So far, I'm just curious. Can you give me an example of like something that will change in this procedure that you will see as impactful?
Yeah. So right now, if you call 911, you are going to get a code 3 ALS ambulance. You're going to get 2 paramedics at a minimum, plus you're probably going to get an engine with 4. And they're working on the cards that actually tell dispatchers what to send out. So if you call 911 and based on what you say, they'll now have the ability to use a different card that we've never used before and say maybe it would be a BLS unit. So you get 2 EMTs like me, really good EMTs, by the way, like me. Yeah. And instead of 2 paramedics. And so you'll keep the paramedics in the system, you'll keep the big fire engine in the system, and you might even keep a rescue with paramedics like this in the system to answer other calls. But the biggest one for me that I've been fighting for years is just WACA, our dispatch center, actually dispatching all of the units. Right now they dispatch police, fire, that's it. But there's other units in the system that they should be dispatching all at the same time, and that's gonna happen with this new system. So super, super excited about it. You're very welcome. Next one, please. And of course, Swanton Valley Fire and Rescue is not just about fighting fires and EMS calls. We do a lot of inspections. They did over 3,000 inspections in calendar year 2022. As it says there, 588 public affairs, public education events, which is important. And then the one below is a bunch of people from Red Cross and Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue that did 150 smoke alarm investigations, inspections in an area that was hit by a fire in Aloha not that long ago in year 2022. So we went back after the fire and then did a big check, and it was very, very successful. We also continue to do landlord training sessions to make apartment complexes, multifamily housing safer, and community risk reduction, which is the way we are going to attack the increase in call volume without increase in funding. We have to have community risk reduction. Next slide, please. And in May of 24, we most likely will have our board of directors refer a new levy to that ballot measure. So ours expires in June of 25. We cannot continue to do at the current rate that we are doing now, so we have to go for a different. We are looking at public attitude surveys right now. Perhaps you've been called by our researchers to see what you approve of based on increasing and maintaining staffing, apparatus, equipment, and the like. So it's coming up a year from today already. Wow, that'll be the first time. So we will continue to communicate, and I know hope there's a meeting coming up, I think, with City of Tigard and some others on kind of this topic in general. Next slide is questions. With that, it concludes the state of the district. Thank you again for taking up your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or we can kick them to these guys.
Questions? Yeah, Council President Hu.
Thank you for coming for the presentation. I'm just curious, we had that really bad heat dome a couple of years ago, and I heard it's coming back this summer, unfortunately. So I think over 500 people died last time. So are you preparing for in any way that, this heat dome coming, or anything you're doing special for that?
It's a great question. And beyond the heat, it's the smoke too, right? So there's 2 new rules in play for us that we have to abide by now. We have partners that have the cooling stations, and we help advertise those or let people know where you can find those, and we let our crews know so they can help patients when they see patients of where do we find these cooling stations. But for us, we have to follow those regulations, and so now it affects what we can do and for how long we can do it. And so that's all provided by OSHA. We follow those standards. And then we can staff up more people. And we've done that in the past, either a wind event, an ice event, a heat event. We're not afraid to staff up more when we can. We had challenges during the pandemic because we were short-staffed in general. So asking people to do more and staff up more rigs was challenging. Now we're almost to a place where it's more normal, And then getting those extra units in play is what we can do. And of course, they carry water and cooling devices on their engines as well. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Councilor Wolf.
So I appreciate you showing the video, Chief Weiss. Do you have a sense from any concerns with the retirements that you'll see a workforce shortage, or do you feel that the interest to become a firefighter is there, so you feel that that kind of succession of getting new recruits in place will be to what you need, I
Great,
guess?
fantastic question. And I'll kind of piecemeal it together. In terms of firefighter paramedics, there was clearly a setback with the pandemic. So in Oregon, it requires a 2-year degree to be a paramedic. And the schools were shutting down. So in my mind, we have about a 2-year gap where we don't have the number of paramedics that we had before to draw from. So that was a challenge. And we set up ways at TVFNR where we could grab paramedics from private providers that would come in as paramedics, and they become firefighter paramedics and then promote through the ranks. So we were trying to find avenues to get people in. We also have our intern program, which we're still doing well with our intern program, and then they have a different list they can be on for hiring. But we're seeing the same thing that everybody's seeing across the country. There is a challenge finding people. I would tell you that today is the best possible time if you want to be a firefighter paramedic. When a lot of these people were testing to be firefighter paramedics for our organization, it wasn't uncommon that there was 1,600, 2,000 candidates applying for a couple jobs. Now you're more in the 200 to 400 range, so that's a complete difference. We still are a destination organization. I'm super proud of everybody that comes here. The quality of candidates that we get are just the same. We had our awards ceremony on Saturday, and it was the same kind of awards we were handing out that we've handed out every year, and people going above and beyond and doing great things. So I know the caliber and quality of people is fantastic, but yeah, it's been a little less than we'd like it to be, but we're still getting quality people. So I know that's going to continue to change too. That's why I encourage people, if you're interested in the profession, seek it out, find out what's required to do so. I know we have fire camp coming up this summer, which is for girls that are age 16 to 21, and that's always been very successful. So yeah, anybody and everybody, find ways to hire on. This is a good time to do it. Yep.
Yeah, Council President Hume.
Just on that note, I talked to several of your members, and I know there's a concerted effort to recruit more members from the diverse group of people, minority groups. So I really commend you for doing that, but just because we are growing more diverse. So it's almost like a necessity to expand your pool of applicants, right?
Yeah.
So I really commend you on that, so thank you.
I really appreciate it because it's an absolute focus of this administration, and it's been a focus of the organization for 15 years. We're working hard on that. So very proud of our efforts so far. Thank you.
I want to thank you for being such incredible ambassadors to our community, all of you. I mean, I see you everywhere at events that I go to, from, different community events. You always have a booth. I can't tell you actually how many fire hats my kid has at home that she wears. I run into y'all at Elmer's on the weekends, and you always have stickers to give her. Reading with kids, you're just incredible ambassadors to our community, and I want to thank you for that. It's wonderful to see you all out there so often. And thank you for being such good partners with the city of Tigard. We work in partnership to serve this city, and we have such a great relationship. I also want to ask if there's anything that we can do to improve it, or anything that we can do for you to support you, other than the May 24 levy that is coming up.
Yeah.
What can we do for you?
You know what? I don't think there's anything different than what we're doing today. When I was here in the Tigard Station, we really focused on our relationship with law enforcement, and they built up that relationship to a point where I think it's outstanding today. Your police chief and myself, we're very good partners and work well together, and I think it's that way on the line as well, which I appreciate. We have great meetings with your city manager and all the other city managers in the county, and so I don't know that I would ask you to do anything else. Maybe get some more people through our community academy. Those are kind of fun events. But beyond that, I appreciate the partnership. I really do, and it's always fun to get together with you and talk and socialize and then collaborate. So thank you so much.
Yeah. My last question, we had Commander McDonald here last week, and I asked him, with the weather changing, our behaviors change. We do different sorts of things, and it was a great reminder. He reminded us, in our cars, make sure our belongings aren't out. We like to keep our windows open, make sure to close them, those sorts of things to maintain our safety. Do you have any advice for our community or any reminders of, don't play with matches outside sort of a thing? Just as our weather changes, and it sort of felt like it changed overnight, how can our community help you?
It is, and I think that there's different areas of Tigard with different geographies that you have, and some are safer than others just by nature if there's a lot of concrete or a lot of asphalt. But there's other areas where we banned backyard burning for this weekend. I think it goes until Thursday, I want to say. And heed those warnings. They're legitimate and real. You saw the wind kick up, and we had fire after fire. I think today was 2 or 3 brush fires I think I saw today throughout the district. So when you're asked to not burn your backyard, it's for a reason, so please do not do that. And then continue to hydrate throughout the summer. And if you see smoke, call. We'll figure it out from there. And then the last thing I would have is continue to partner with Fire District on fireworks, and we'll see, because that's coming up too. That'll be the next topic of conversation, right? So be safe when we use them, and be safe with your burning when you burn, and I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, that's a great tip, because honestly, I didn't know there was a no burn. Not that I'm burning in my backyard, but maybe there are ways that we can partner to let our community know when these sorts of things are happening in the future, so the information gets out there.
Appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much for being here tonight. We appreciate it. And thanks
Thank
for all
you
that you
so
do for our
much.
community. Our next item on the agenda is a joint meeting with the Tigard Public Library Board. Come on up. I will just admit to missing you. I love that you have props.
We have a bit of a scene
It's
change.
always the best presentation. I mean,
Good evening, Mayor Lube, city councilors, members of the Tigard community, and fellow Tigard teammates. My name is Halstead Bernard. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the director of the Tigard Public Library. While preparing for tonight, I thought about the night 3 years ago we didn't meet. So 3 years ago, library buildings across the county and across the country were closed to the public. I was masking up and wearing nitrile gloves, entering our building, creeping inside, collecting Chromebooks and other materials to deliver to our teammates as we learned how to work remotely for our first times. And I affectionately refer to these times as zombie supply runs. During that time, we discussed the timing of this meeting, and we decided to postpone until later in the year, when the pandemic was over. But you know how this goes. So almost exactly 3 years ago tonight, voters said yes to Washington County's library levy renewal. And not long after that, library teammates came back into the building, started offering library takeout, other services. Not long after that, Margaret and I learned how to hold virtual library board meetings thanks to our wonderful IT team. Not long after that, buildings reopened, and after that, you're going to hear about in a moment. But after this, who can say? Whatever comes after this, I know one thing we'll never take for granted again. We'll never take for granted such a devoted, inspiring, and supportive library board, and a vibrant, creative, wonderful teen library council. And we'll never take for granted meetings like this. With all that said, I'll turn this over to our chair, Mary Bogert.
Thank you, Halstead. I first would like to introduce our library board members that are here. Sitting next to me is Shirley Edwards. This is Teen Library Council Sarah, and I'm sorry I don't know your last name, and Kate Ristow. And we have a few other library board members, but they were traveling worldwide, so yeah. So the library board, we would like to thank the council for this opportunity to share with you what's been happening at the library over the past year. Libraries represent values that are core to a democracy, Librarians and library staff provide services and collections that inform, engage, illuminate, and help people of all ages learn more about the world around them. Libraries are also a place where community members connect to things like internet, computers, programs, books, movies, board games, and more. Most importantly, libraries connect us to each other. Let's see how well you know your library. Sarah has a few trivia questions for you, along with some prizes.
I should just say they love doing this to us. Yeah, y'all are new. You haven't experienced this yet.
Hi, I'm Sarah Daunt, and I have a few questions for you. This first one is, what year did we move into our current building?
Not multiple choice.
There are numbers involved.
2006?
Close, but no. No, lower.
2003?
Almost there.
2004?
Yes. This next question is, if you deposit your book return to the automatic book return slot on the side of the building, how long does it take for your books to be registered and as returned?
Five minutes?
No.
24 hours?
Way lower.
I'm game. 2 minutes.
Lower.
All right, J. Ross.
1 minute? Lower?
Lower.
30 seconds.
Lower.
Immediately.
Yes.
We eventually got there. But if I had to guess like 6 times, does it count?
Yes, it does.
Thank you, Shirley. I appreciate it.
The third question is, how many patrons received tax help this year?
Maybe 1,000?
Not quite. Lower. It's a very specific number.
758.
Closer, but lower.
Yeah.
666.
That was so close.
$670?
Lower. Oh my God, you're so close.
668?
Almost there.
Oh.
So do we do 7 or 9? Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was 7 or 9. 669?
Yes. The last question is, what is a different way you can access materials without going to the library?
And there are multiple answers to this question.
Can it be?
Yes. Should we see if anybody else can get another answer? Yeah.
Libby.
Yes. The others are Tumble Books, Job Builder, digital newspaper and magazines, homework help, and a lot more.
Yes, so I also had the pleasure of working with the Teen Library Council on making a video, which we'll show you tonight, that goes over what's been happening at the library this year. And the biggest thing is this moving back open to being in the public, but I'm going to stop talking and let's play the video and we can see what the Teen Library Council had to say. And you'll see a fair amount of librarians in here also.
To the Tigard Public Library.
So the 5-year strategic plan set a course for the library, with a particular focus on community, knowledge, and enrichment.
Hello, Ash. Oh, yes. So we walk over here through, this is the youth services area, and you come over here, and if you approach slowly, you will see that there is a play stage where all of the puppets live.
Hello. And this is why I love the library. Because I love puppets.
In-person story times are back, including bilingual story times from puppets to Teen Library Council. Kids love the library.
Some folks might be surprised to know the variety of things that I get to learn as a teen librarian. So I have learned how to referee Quidditch matches. I've learned the official rules for Super Smash Brothers tournaments. I've learned needle felting. I've learned basic robot coding, all kinds of stuff.
Since September, 3,651 patrons visited Storytime and 1,243 summer meals were served. Our library is a place for enrichment and connection. With one-on-one tech support, 268 served, and ARP tax help, 555 in 2002.
One thing that other people might find surprising is that libraries are not really that quiet of a place. I have been shushed by patrons far more often than I have shushed patrons. So people think our jobs are all about shushing, and it's really not.
Welcome to the D&D section in games. This is where the D&D is and games are put.
I may have just said that the library is not a very quiet place, but my favorite place in this library actually is very quiet. Come with me. So this is the Houghton Reading Room. It is definitely the coziest room at the library, and I would love to show it to you, but unfortunately it's quiet in there. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to point out all of the cool features and cozy furniture, but I'm not going to say anything at all. Okay, you ready? Wasn't that cozy? Isn't that nice? Don't you want to just sit in there and read? I know I do, but I can't because I have to get back to work.
So knowledge, its patrons can relax at the library or bring their holds home. And not to mention, in March, they saved a lot of money by borrowing items from the library. So the Tigard Public Library continues to be a community hub for knowledge and enrichment where everyone feels welcome.
So what kind of book do you guys want to read?
I want to read Elephant and Piggy book.
Tasteful indeed.
I want to read about Goosebumps.
That I'm not so sure about.
I want to learn about digging holes.
Very economical of you.
Yes.
Lucky for you, we have all of those and way more at the library.
Goosebumps.
So thank you to our Teen Library Council and to our teen librarian, Lisa, over there. But we do have one more thing.
I'd like to share about a special collection. Soon you will see there is plenty of selection. You may be wondering about what I sing. These are a few of our library of things.
Because we talked so much about the Library of Things last time we were here, and now we have a utterly amazing collection. I think we'll pass it on to Mary so she can talk about it.
Thank you, Kate. Have you ever started a project and wished that you had a specific item or tool and you don't want to go buy it? Well, the Library of Things can help you with that. Across the entire WCCLS library system, there are 1,240 items you can borrow. From mobile hotspots, board games, cornhole set, digital radon detector to musical instruments. And here are a few of the favorites at Tigard Library. A handy dandy metal detector. I know that pickleball is a big thing, so here is a, pickleball set. There are paddles. You can set this up in your driveway and play pickleball. Very available during the winter, but summer months, I'm sure it is constantly checked out. Here, Shirley, I'll hand that to you. And in this handy dandy box, we have a few other things. I know you've all desired to be musicians. You too can learn to play the violin. Traveling in the future? Here's a travel converter kit for multiple international locations. And Heidi, these are Mayor Lube. These would work for you. They are early learning, turn and twist, spell words for Elizabeth.
That is so cool. There's so many cool things.
And one of the most popular items, the human torso. There are actually, I believe, 2 or 3 torsos at the Tigard Library, and they are quite popular. Those are just a few of the things that you can find at the Tigard Library of Things. And now, I think that wraps up. We'd like to open it up if you have any questions for the board or our director, Halstead.
Any questions? Yeah, that was so fun. After we're certainly not post-pandemic, it's still very much a part of our lives. Can you talk a little bit about how that has really changed the way that the library is serving the community? Maybe some of the things that you're continuing to do that we learned?
Absolutely, I'd love to. Thank you, Mayor, for that question. One of the most significant things that we changed during the pandemic was, of course, our library takeout service. So at a time when nobody was allowed in the building except for the people working in the building, we were able to deliver materials to people's cars. We have continued that service. We don't deliver to trunks anymore for safety reasons, but you can pull up to the staff side, or what we call the teammate side of the building, and our express holds pickup. If you have items on hold, you can call and ask for your items to be delivered to a small table. That is something that we heard loud and clear from our community, especially during our strategic planning process. Our new strategic plan rolled out in 2021, and that was something that we heard, that flexible delivery of materials for people who are too busy to come into the building or have lots of folks in the car that they need to watch and take care of instead of coming inside and wanting to press all the buttons on the elevator and the automated doors, which are very popular. So people can do that from the comfort of their homes or their cars, other homes. And I'm very happy to note that we will have a pilot program with WCCLS later this year, which we will be piloting holds lockers for our lobby. Holds lockers are like Amazon lockers you might see, so that if you're not at home or you want to pick something up in a more convenient location, you can pick it up in a locker type of setting that will be in our lobby, and it's all checked out as soon as you walk up with your card. The locker pops open and it checks out to you. Paired with our early lobby opening hours, something that we brought back from before the pandemic, so 9 a.m. before the 10 a.m. library open Monday through Friday, means that people who are on their way to work or running errands can just pop in and out and pick up holds very conveniently, even when the library itself is not open. There are also other things like Ask a Librarian and book stacks that we debuted during the pandemic, or I should say your personal librarian, in which you can just talk to a librarian and say, I like books like the Expanse series. Can you give me a list of 5 hard sci-fi space operas? And they will happily do that for you. Those are just a few of the things I can think of off the top of my head. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, Councilor Wolf.
So thank you, Mayor Lube. That actually, Halstead bringing up the plan. It's an interesting time, I would think, to create a strategic plan kind of in the launch of COVID and think about how you incorporate where we are today, but where we want to be once we get to the other side, and we didn't know when that would be. So now that you're kind of halfway there, how do you, I mean, it seems like you guys have a great plan. You feel like you're on track and it made sense and you're flying forward. I mean, all the things that you shared and all the things you're doing seem incredibly Tigard focused, and so congratulations on where you are. But just curious, Halstead, if any reflection on where you are in your plan.
That's a great question, Councilor Wolf, and thank you for asking. We're very excited about our strategic plan and where we're at in the process. I think the fact that we really rooted our strategic plan in equity and diversity, inclusion, and belonging helped guide us even through a pandemic with centering people that may not be in the library building and may not be able to come into the library building or don't feel safe to come into the library building, and thinking about how we're serving people out in the community. Of course, now that we're in a different phase of the pandemic, we're allowed to do so much more outreach than we were earlier. Summer reading is about to kick off on June 1st, which is the busiest time for the library. And there's so much in our strategic plan about increasing the ways that we remove barriers in our community. One of those ways that was in our strategic plan is making sure that all TTSD students have a student card. And that means that it's a limited card, limited by item type that people can borrow, but they can easily come in and convert that to an all-access card just by coming into the library. That was part of our strategic plan, and we were happy to do it. We will be continuing to send those cards out to kids and families I think it happens every September now. Actually, it happens twice a year now that I say it, because we just had another one. So programs like that, we're very excited to offer. Bilingual story time, making sure that we reintroduced bilingual story time was also part of our strategic plan. And there's lots that are teammate focused about the professional development that we will continue to provide our team, especially in the realms of equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. These are aspects that we're guided by our city strategic plan, our new DEIB manager, and our DEIB team, and we're very excited to move City of Tigard forward through our library services as well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Council President Hu?
Just like you said, I'm very happy with the library things, and in addition to DEIB effort, I think that make a lot of difference in terms of our climate goal as well. Because if I were to travel internationally, maybe once every other years, I would not have to buy all those, adapter myself. I can go borrow it, so it won't be sitting in my house forever. So that's great for climate as well. So thank you.
And just to add on that, one of the things that we've also seen is you can also loan things through the WCCLS system. So all across, so you can, I believe in Beaverton right now, you can get a power washer from their Library of Things. So that idea that these kind of one-use items that you wouldn't want to invest in and buy, it makes things more accessible because you can get them through your library.
How can we better support you? What do you need from us?
That's my favorite question, Mayor Lube, so thank you for asking it. One of the ways that you all support us every day is when you talk to everyone in the community about all of the services that they can access at home and at the library. From early literacy with our story times and puppets like you saw, to opportunities for teens to get involved with Teen Library Council and to access board games and video games and all the wonderful programming that Lisa is working on, to summer reading for adults as well as kids and teens. So if you've ever wanted to break that Goodreads goal, now is your year. Come sign up, and there are fabulous prizes. that you can be entered in for a raffle too, and these fabulous prizes as well. But it really is about making sure that everyone in our community who needs to be connected with resources knows that there's a place where they can go. They can be without judgment, they can be safe, they can be seen and valued. We are embracing the inherent value of every person along with our DEIB goals here at the City of Tigard, and that's what we endeavor to do by being a community hub where everyone feels welcome. So please, when you're speaking with community members and they're saying to you, I need to find a job, I just don't know where to start working on my resume, we can help. If they're wondering just how to get connected with free Wi-Fi because they can't afford to have connectivity at home, we can help. And if they just need a place to be quiet, to be away from everything and just have a moment to think, we can help. We are here and we love to support our community. It's built into what we do, and that's how you can help.
I will say that I have taken advantage of that quiet spot where I've gotten out of my house and grabbed my computer and just worked at the library. It's such a wonderful space. I do also want to ask our teen library council representative specifically to you, is there anything that we can do for you?
I can't particularly think of anything off the top of my head right now. Everything, yeah.
Well, if that changes, please know that you can reach out to us directly, or you can reach out through Library Director Bernard. But we are always open and available to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any additional comments or questions? Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for bringing so many fun things. Like, I didn't know we had a metal detector. Now I know. These are the fun facts that I love telling our community about. Did you know that we had this? So thank you so much for sharing tonight. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate the service that you provide our community by serving on the library board. And again, I'm biased, but y'all are just so amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the downtown parking management update, and I see we have redevelopment manager Farrelly here to give the staff report. Welcome. Did you bring fun questions and prizes too?
That was a tough act to follow. I do have some book recommendations about parking I can share with you later, though. Good evening. I am Sean Farrelly, redevelopment project manager, and this is a follow-up. Some violin music would be nice to go with this. This is a follow-up to the March 21st council presentation on downtown parking management. We know there's a lot of interest in the topic, so we wanted to check in with you, make sure we're on the right track. First thing to share with you is we have a proposed scope for an updated parking study. That was included in your packet, the scope. There was interest about this on council and some members of the TCAC. Scope is similar, but not identical to the 2021 study. Again, there will be 2 separate survey days, about 10 hours of parking occupancy data collected each day. There'll be 1 weekend, 1 weekday, and we'd like to capture the effects of events on parking. So perhaps during one of the days could be during the farmers market. We do plan to work with the parking steering committee, which I'll talk about in a little bit, on some of the study details, like what days of the week, what are the stop and start times. Get some feedback from people who are familiar with how parking ebbs and flows in downtown. So the study won't collect information about overstays, because we've got enough data on that. I think it won't be as comprehensive in collecting data on private lots. But the scope does include some evaluation of locations for potential ADA accessible on-street spaces. We thought that was important to include. So I'll go through the rest of my presentation, but we'd like to get your feedback on that scope. The second thing we wanted to share with you is our plan to restart and reconstitute the Parking Steering Committee. In addition to staff and the 3 returning business owner reps, we have an additional representative from the Town Center Advisory Commission, 2 reps from the Tigard Transportation Advisory Committee, a representative from the Committee for Citizen Engagement, and a person who is interested in ADA parking issues. The plan for this committee to start meeting in the summer. We think this provides a broad perspective on parking, including the views of downtown visitors. And we'll hold at least one public workshop to get feedback on any proposed changes. Now, the items that the committee will be studying and providing recommendations are the conversion of these unlimited parking spaces that exist on Burnham Street right now. We'd like to make them a combination of 2-hour or 4-hour spaces. Although when we met with the committee last year, there was some talk of maybe 3 hours would be a good time limit too, but that would require some municipal code amendments. So yeah, this will address the parking demand by the opening of the Universal Plaza. Again, plaza events on evenings and weekends are going to be accommodated by directing visitors to lots at the City Hall and Public Works Building. But on-street parking will likely be in demand, especially on summer weekdays and weekends. Another thing this committee would make recommendations on are implementation of a downtown parking permit program. Parking permits were enabled by council, but the details were not worked out. There's a lot of details to figure out. We need to figure out, whether to cap the number of permits. Right now, the municipal code says that anyone can get a permit. That would could have some very unintended consequences. So, want to study about capping that number of permits, designing a criteria for eligibility, pricing, permit type and technology, how the city is going to issue and track these, and how that workload will be distributed. Some of these questions will require council action and or municipal code amendments. But ultimately, we want a parking management plan that balances the needs of downtown employees and residents with visitors and customers to downtown. Another item that the committee will be making recommendations on is something that really holds a lot of promise, but it's probably the hardest thing to do, and that is operationalizing shared parking agreements. We know from our study, and although the study may have had some hangovers from the COVID lockdown, and the fact that many employees are working from home, we do know, even from previous parking studies, that there's a lot of privately owned parking that is not at capacity, and there's some businesses that have a surplus of parking and some businesses that have a deficit of parking. So if we could pair these two groups up, that could go a long way to addressing the parking management. City can't force this, but we can be a facilitator. We can share data, and we think it's really important for everyone if downtown businesses and property owners can collaborate on this. Because if you have extra parking, that's not doing anything for anyone. And if there's, say, an employee who needs to park somewhere that business doesn't have their own lot, that'll be a good solution. And we do know that some of this is going on anecdotally. And then the last thing we'd like to get the committee's help on is our plan to roll out and communicate that there will be some increase in parking enforcement. And community development has some proposed budget funds that would allow us to engage a private contractor that can increase the enforcement of the city's on-street and public parking lot. And that's just kind of what you need to do to effectively manage parking. So I'm open to hear any comments on the proposed scope from the consultant on the updated parking study and on our plan to restart the parking committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Let's maybe just start with restarting the parking committee. Any concerns or additions based on the membership? Yeah, Councilor Wolf?
Thank you, Mayor Lube. I had posed a question about a downtown resident, but it sounds like there's a 2-for-1 with one of the participants who's a business owner and a resident. So gets that perspective. And then I appreciated the staff's interest in getting individuals outside of downtown as well. So just as a user of, downtown for short-term visits. So thank you. So that was addressed.
So I think we have general thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. And then any feedback based on the scope, the contract? Any concern? Yeah, Council President Hu.
I think I'm a little concerned about, because we're funding the wayfinding study, and I'm just not sure before we implement all those recommendations from the wayfinding study, this parking study will be accurate reflection of what the situation will be, assuming we're going to put appropriate signs so people will know where all the empties. Because I was just talking to Councilor Wolf that having lived in Tiger for 18 years, I just realized a month ago that Cooper Mountain has a bunch of parking behind them. And I assume that if people know to go park behind them when they go visit there, I assume there will be less parking problem on the street. So I don't know, I just don't know, but I assume we're not going to do the wayfinding thing until at least after July. So I guess we just need to continue this parking study until then, or after that. So I don't know, I'm just rambling here. My concern is that the timing of the wayfinding and the parking study may not, match and truly reflect what's going on later on. So does that make sense?
No, I understand the concern. Yeah, so the parking study won't be started till July, and probably not until we have a new TIF agency staff member. And then, to implement that is probably going to be another year or more out. We need to determine how much it costs. It's primarily going to be aimed at pedestrians, but there will be some wayfinding involved, directing people to parking spots as well. But we think, that could be like when this wayfinding plan has been implemented, that could be 2 years from now. That might be time to do another parking study anyway.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that the parking study is not going to be until July, simply because, I think everyone will agree our downtown is chaos, and, anytime soon doesn't quite reflect, I think, the vibrancy that we're hoping to get. So July feels like a good time for people to come back out and really kick off exploring downtown. So, great. Any feedback or additional? I'm glad that we're using this study again outside of the pandemic to really see what the behaviors are, so we can make smart decisions on just taking care of our downtown parking. Yeah, Councilor Wolf.
I think it'll be interesting because I think doing Universal Plaza in the summer with the farmers market, that's kind of a pressure test, I guess. I would think, right now of a really high volume participation. So I think it'll be a really important time to do that study. So I think that's great.
Yeah, just anecdotally, I was there a little bit after it opened, maybe like 9:05 after breakfast, and there was sufficient parking. But as soon as I went back out, it was full. It became very, very lively, and so I think, yeah. So maybe the parking study should really, for sure, include a Sunday during the hours.
And there's a good example of a shared parking agreement, because they have an agreement with B&B Printing to allow people to park there, and that takes up a lot of the demand there.
Yeah, they have a great sign that says parking here.
Mm-hmm.
It's helpful. Well, thank you so much. Do you have what you need?
I do.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Next on our agenda, we have a police service levy discussion, and we have City Manager Reimer and Police Commander McDonald to present this item. First, I'd like to kick it off by saying, wishing you all a happy National Police Week.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Mayor. I'll kick it off, and the team is here. So we have Commander McDonald, Lisa Shaw is here to help us with any financial conversations. Obviously, our city attorney is here. Kathy Nyland, our assistant city manager, and Kelsey Anderson are also both also joining us, available to talk about engagement and other questions. So this is the second of what now we've envisioned 3 conversations. And so the first one we had just a couple weeks ago when the chief and commander were here, really talking about the services that are funded and what we're seeing as a result of the community support of our police department from their May 2020 approval of our levy. Tonight it's to talk more about the what and really what we're recommending in terms of the approach to pursue a renewal of the current levy that we have in place. And then next week is to talk about the when. And so we'll really focus on the when. So tonight, I plan to give you just a really high level overview. It's much more about the conversation tonight. Like I said, Lisa is here. If we really want to get into some of the numbers, if the council's interested. Commander McDonald's obviously was here during that time too as well to talk about that and other services, and then the other teammates are here, especially if there's any legal questions about what a renewal is compared to other options that you may have. So if I can just start with the high-level overview. So as I mentioned already, our recommendation is to pursue a renewal of the current levy that was approved and is set to end on June 30th of 2025. As you recall, that's 0.29 for every 1,000 assessed value, and so that was a key. Obviously, I wasn't there during the time, but talking with the team, understanding our goal then was to really have that 10-year vision, a 10-year view, and looking at the first being approved for the 5-year initial term. The finances are set up with a 10-year view to really look at how we're accumulating some funds now to help pay for increased costs in the future, with the second being a renewal for the second 5-year period. And so there's many reasons that we think it's important to pursue a renewal. That is probably one of the guiding ones, because that's what we were planning, that's what the community is aware of, and that's how our finances are set up. As you know, that funded 8 new officers, training, other support positions within the PD that have been of value to us in providing a safe community. We think the level of the team that we have here, hiring them up, getting a full team in place, really understanding what services can be provided, we would have the resources we need to continue to have a safe community. We also think things like you considered this year in the budget, where we brought forward 2 new positions, and we also brought forward a half-time position to support, making sure that some of our motor officers can be out in the field rather than behind the desk, if you will, and also having the 2 new community-oriented police officers that are really focused on things that we're seeing in the community. And so we think with the levy renewal, as well as continuing looking at what our needs are of the community, of the department, we can continue to provide that safe community. So as part of this, it's important that we always look at, what does this mean overall, for the overall financing of our organization. The community support a couple of years ago was obviously significant in really raising the service level of our police department and meeting some of the goals of the chief, the team, and the council, and the community, obviously. And so keeping that in mind as well, as we believe the renewal gives us the best option to continue to advance all the good work that we're working on here today. As I mentioned, looking at that 10-year view, our finances were set up where we'd be able to accumulate some funds, and I believe, Lisa, we're at the end we'll have about $1.2 million of funds reserved at the end of the 5-year period. As we know, then what we'd collect in the next year, we'd have some funds up front to continue to pay for some of the cost escalation out into those future years. Obviously, today it's 2023, so we have a decent level of confidence, but that's our best estimate at this time in terms of the finances. And as I said, Lisa can obviously talk much more details of the setup or where we're at today financially and what it looks like into that next 5-year period. I also mentioned that our city attorney is here to talk about what is a renewal. We need to be very sensitive on what we're asking, how we're wording it, what it means in terms of the services that are being provided. So Shelby, I know it can be a great resource for you there. And then my last comment is we talked about the when. We're really hoping to stay away from the when tonight because we really think we need to hone in on first what are we going to be asking the community, and then next week coming right back with some information that Kathy and others are compiling to talk about when we think it may be the best time to be really be in front of our community. Chief Weiss already mentioned it tonight for TVFNR. We're having conversations with them, TTSD, and other of our regional partners, especially ones that have the taxing jurisdictions that also include Tigard. And so trying to understand that entire environment is what we'll bring next week in order to help you make that decision. So that concludes my high-level remarks. I'm going to first ask if any teammates have anything that I may have missed that you want to share right now. Otherwise, Mayor, will turn it back to you and just have a dialogue on the questions you have for us at this time. So anything that any of you want to add, or Kathy or Kelsey, before I turn it over to the Mayor that I may have missed in the introduction? Okay. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you, and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, and thank you for going through the exercise of confirming that a renewal is what's appropriate and what's needed for our community for the next 5 years. Questions? Discussion? Yeah, Council President Hu.
Definitely, when I was talking to voter last year, I heard support for the police department, no matter what party affiliation they were. So, but Fire Chief West did mention in passing that they are conducting surveys, so to gauge support. So, are we doing that, or are we going to do something like that?
We'll have Kathy. You want to jump in? I know Kelsey as well, but Kathy, I'll ask you to jump in on that one.
That is, we do have funding, and we have talked to our pollster about conducting a citywide a poll, essentially, to gauge cost sensitivity. So we have only had initial discussions, and we could probably, depending on their availability, get something out in early fall.
Councilor Wolf.
So I really appreciated the financing perspective. So thank you, Lisa, for doing that. Because I definitely, with a school board hat on, absolutely remember the levy when it was proposed. I did not recall kind of a 10-year plan, and I think that it's really compelling to say, you know, that this is our budget forecast, this is what we intend to do, to be able to roll and keep that commitment to the city of Tigard. So as Mayor Lube said, just really appreciate this and think that that's an important component for our community to understand, and that we're staying committed to what we said we would do in 2020. And I think the other piece of just kind of the what and the support, as Council President Hu said, for it runs across all individuals as showing support. I'm always interested in the schools and, you know, the SROs, and that's been a hot topic for many schools, many areas. And so, Commander, if you guys have any feedback that you'd like to give that you've heard from the schools, it'd be great to hear.
Sure, thank you for the question, Councilor Wolf. Actually, did reach out directly to, or through the SROs, because that's how we generally do it in the schools, is they're the ones that have that tight relationship, especially with the school administrators when they're working day to day with them. So reached out through the officers and got statements from each of the principals at the 3 schools, so the 2 middle schools and the high schools, all 3 of which were in support, highly supportive. I'll just paraphrase some of these because, in the interest of time, because some of them went on, and we all probably could about all of our school resource officers, because that's the type of support that they have. So from the high school principal said, one, here he truly puts the resource in school resource officer, making himself present and available for questions, guidance, and advice for students, staff, and parents. So that just speaks volumes about the relationship that they feel that they have with the SROs. And then here's one from the principal at Fowler, who said, every adult I speak to feels safer and more regulated with SROs in the building. And just this morning, our SRO arrived 30 minutes early because we had a rumor of a threat last week. So speaking from the opportunity of where we have to maybe do something a little extra, that wasn't something that the school asked for. We did it because of the relationship that we have and knew that it would have an impact. And then from the principal at Tuality, and this is where I love it because this is the student connection. Our students love it when our SRO joins them at recess or they see him in the hallways. Parents appreciate having him available to report concerns to, things happening in their neighborhoods, etc. So all of our principals that are working on a daily basis have a great feeling of teamwork with the SROs and with the police department, and not just with the SROs. I mean, they get the full force of the police department if some event were to happen, obviously. So it is a big part of it, and as you know, the levy funds one of the SROs through that. So it does make a big impact. Clearly, at least with the top leaders, the CEOs, if you will, of each of those schools, that they see the value in the SROs.
And I guess just, and I know that the levy is an essential piece for a much larger, base with the 8 patrol officers as well. But the reason I wanted to have that conversation is I think by having one in each school, you do get to build those relationships. You do get to make that connection versus maybe the middle schools having to share. So I just really appreciate that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Councilor Singh.
Yeah, my question is, I think just the timeline in terms of the date when the levy took place. It was in 2020, right? Is there a specific date when that happened?
It was the May 2020 election. I don't have the date off the top of my head in terms of the actual, and then as I mentioned, just the 5 years expires on June 30th of 25.
Okay, because I think around that same time, there was a murder of George Floyd, and so I'm just interested in, from that emerged the defund the police sort of movement, and so I'm just looking back at zooming out and thinking about the bigger picture in terms of the support for a levy. I think it's just a different era we're in now, and I support Council President Hu's sort of approach to maybe having more polling to just gauge what our communities are saying around this issue. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yes, Assistant City Manager Nyland.
Yeah, so I can provide a little bit more information on that. As City Manager Reimer said, the current police service levy went to ballot in May of 2020, and 2020 was an unusual year for so many reasons. Weeks before ballots were mailed, we were introduced to COVID, and we've had some fun, interesting facts presented at tonight's council meeting. So I thought I would throw in another version. In Oregon, on that May 2020 ballot election, there were 48 measures on ballots. 36 of them were passed. All measures passed in the metropolitan area, which is very unique. Typically, passage is around 50 to 60%. So seeing 75% and 100% passage, successful passage, is unheard of. We do currently, as you may recall, have a community survey out in Tigard right now, so we will get an idea of core services and satisfaction. We should get more information about that in July, and as mentioned, we can definitely talk to our pollster that we have on contract who has worked with us before to launch a poll to kind of gauge interest and cost sensitivity and whatnot, and we can develop those questions.
Do you feel like that answered your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Council President Hu.
Are there any drawbacks for having that kind of survey earlier than fall, or is that?
I think it depends on the availability of our pollster. So I can make a call next week. We did have an initial conversation with him about 2 months ago to get an idea, as we are exploring 3 potential ballot measures in the next 12 to 18 months. So one of the things that he, in that conversation, was renewals are traditionally, historically, easier to pass because they're predictable. People know what they're getting. In 2 recent efforts, renewal efforts polled at 40%, and normally you'd like to see about a 60% approval. So he was just saying to us that renewals are still supportive, but there's just the indication that more work needs to be done to get to a successful passage. So as far as timing, as I said, I can reach out next week and have those conversations to see their availability and what we need to do internally to develop the questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. I was just going to build off of that. So one of the things that I didn't mention, but that we're recommending also, I've had individual conversations, is that a kind of informal subcommittee of the council, 2 of you would be appointed to work directly with the team that's engaged here, just to have those internal conversations, and to the question, really looking at laying out what does the next 12 months look like, right? And there's certain things that we can and can't do as a public body, but some of those initial conversations would be laying out the schedule. When should we poll? Should we contemplate what, from what we learned there, what we need a second poll, et cetera. Kelsey and team have developed a lot of great information already, and Maddie, in terms of the information that we have. So one thing we would like to do, if not tonight, come back next week with having 2 of you, if you're open to it, work with us directly, just so we can kind of work through some of these things to understand your views as the elected officials and what you know about it, and taking our professional opinions as well. So.
So, excuse me, the guidance that you're looking for tonight is just a general, we're comfortable with continuing to move forward in this discussion, or are you looking for something a little more concrete, or just, yeah.
Concrete from the standpoint that, yes, it's a renewal that we want to pursue. And if that's the case, that really then sets us up to start to execute on that, right? And like I just said, what are the next 12 months? If you wanted to consider anything else, we'd need to know in really short order what that is. I'm not sensing it, but if it was, we'd need to know that so we could come back with the appropriate information, and if it would change any of the recommendations. But like I said, I'm not sensing it, so tonight we'd want the 4 of you here saying, yeah, that's where we want to go. We would obviously circle back with Councilor Shaw just to verify with her. And then continue to move forward, hopefully working with 2 of you as well.
Okay. Are there any concerns? I heard your concern, Councilor Singh, or any additional comments? I mean, I'll just say, as somebody, I think I'm actually the lone councilor member of the council who was here before the levy was passed. And, when the police chief would come, and there are a variety of complicated, complex feelings around police in Tigard, outside of Tigard, nationally, and a lot of these narratives. But I also, I think back to Mayor Snyder when he was doing his mayor walking, and he asked people, how many officers do you think are on patrol? And there were some people who responded that 100 officers were on patrol, which may be a little excessive for our city. But certainly people, I don't think anyone guessed less than 20, maybe. And so I continue to be stressed and frustrated for our police to see that, half the time we're still operating on minimums. And I know and I think of where we would be without the levy, and having those officers, we would be down another 8 officers, and certainly there are outside challenges because of COVID and recruitment and training, and we're doing all of those things to work on that. And it's not something that, the council or the city is sitting on its hands, and I think that sometimes that's a narrative that can be out in the community, that the council isn't actively doing anything about this. But, every month that the police chief comes and we have the discussion of, still at like 50%, I continue to be frustrated. And I think about what it would be for our community and our you know, there's really the priority 1 and 2 calls and what it must be like for those individuals in life and death situations to have to wait 6 minutes, right? And what a difference that would make for those individuals if we even had less officers. And there are a wide variety of other issues, such as our facilities and those sorts of things that we are working hard to find a solution on. But I think, you know, hearing from our community while I was campaigning for this, hearing from the community just in general since then, I think there is a strong desire to continue to move forward with a renewal, and I appreciate the transparency about what the levy has provided since it's been passed. It's literally every month you can see exactly how many training hours, how many officers, where officers are sitting, and so that level of transparency has just been wonderful to be able to tell that story to our community. You have entrusted us with this levy, and this is how we're spending those funds. So that's a very long-winded way, I think, to say that I understand, and I think we should continue to have those conversations about what policing means and what it looks like here. But I don't. So I wholeheartedly think that we need to continue to move forward on this renewal. Any additional comment? I mean, no one that has to comment. That was sort of a brain drain. Councilor Wolf?
So I agree. I mean, I just appreciated Chief Weiss, even at their point with their budget, coming back and saying, but if I heard him correctly, that they're looking to increase because they just aren't able to sustain their current budget. So I think that we also need to look at, going back to that one of the lowest permanent rates, in a city our size, in our, makeup, and the challenges that we have, and the commitment that we've made, and the planning that we've done to hold true to that, to the training, the de-escalation, all those pieces. And I think that we're on that track, and I agree with the additional information on polling. I appreciate Councilor Singh bringing up those challenges and having those really honest conversations with our community. So I support it.
Do you feel like you have the direction that you need to move forward?
Yeah, absolutely, and we all appreciate it. I also want to recognize Chief is on. She's on vacation, but I didn't want to draw her into the conversation, but thank you, Chief. Hopefully you're enjoying your time. And so we will continue with that, and then next week, as I said, we'll talk about the WAN. Kathy Nyland will primarily lead that conversation, and then also if you will contemplate or consider having 2 of you join us as kind of a subcommittee, informal subcommittee, just to have those conversations that we need to have to really make sure that we do this right, pay attention to the entire community, and have a path forward to a ballot measure to be determined. So absolutely. Anything else from anyone else need clarity? Kathy, Kelsey, anyone else need clarity on anything?
Nope, this was helpful. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. We have no non-agenda items tonight. Yeah, it's election, so ballots are closed. It's 8 o'clock, so hopefully you got your ballot in. I have seen a lot of cars driving by and dropping them off. And that's the hard part when there's a council night on election night. And so we will move on to council liaison reports. Does anyone want to volunteer to go first?
I actually have no updates, so.
Okay, yeah. And that's totally fine too on those months that it happens, because sometimes you can be scrambling for it, so. Yeah, Council President who?
So Town Center Advisory Commission had their meeting last week, and they talked about parking study, which was just discussed, and they also mentioned the proposed Red Rock Creek Trail alignment study, and it should be done by the end of the year. And just one more report update about the Downtown Reimagine open house. 30 people show up, and additional material will be posted online for public comments. So that's all I have. Thank you.
How did the open house go? Did you attend or?
No, I didn't attend.
Okay.
So.
Councilor Wolf.
council president who didn't attend something.
I'm so glad that you said that and I did not. Thank you.
Because you are the model. No, you are the model of being present. So I'm sorry for. So my update, the Urban Renewal Funding Selection Committee, we have met twice. One grant request is in process, so I'll just say that one. And the earlier one was an award to Tiger Tap House as they expand their kitchen area, which is very exciting for downtown. The Policy Advisory Board for Community Development Block Grants in conjunction with Washington County and HUD dollars, we met last week, and the county consortium is in the final stages of creating the home ARP, which again, it's still HUD dollars, application that then we provide out to those seeking funds in support of working in houselessness or supporting services in Washington County. That gets approved in June, and then also Washington County has to reapply for qualifying as a CDBG home entitlement jurisdiction. So we're also in that process to ensure that those federal dollars continue to go our way. And I'll look to City Manager Reimer. I believe that, and then my primers from Skylar, City of Tigard could be a standalone entitlement, but it's just at that bubble. So we continue as a member of the Washington County group, and that is our plan to continue as that. But I'll let City Manager Reimer address that.
So we will bring this forward on June 20th to have a council conversation, just to make sure that all of you concur with what we're thinking, but to have the conversation. And so we are shaping up on June 20th.
Perfect.
Skylar will be here.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. And then Committee for Community Engagement meets tomorrow night, and lots of things, Pride, Juneteenth events. And Kim or Shelby will be there talking about the houselessness campaign ordinance and then the police levy renewal. So that's that. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I think just overview of what I've been up to just with the legislature still in session. A lot of what I'm doing is advocating and talking and meeting. We did meet and talk kind of about Washington County budget and the way that that's impacting our budgets, and certainly advocating where we can for library and MISTIP funding. But yeah, just a very high level. I'm looking forward to session being over. I think it's kind of, throwing you in the deep end for a long session. So yeah, if you have any questions, I copied all of you on some testimony that we submitted last week for a very controversial bill. But please reach out if you have additional questions or any bills that you'd like the city to take a look at. We don't have an executive session, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn so Councilor Wolf can start checking the election updates.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
The motion to adjourn has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.